I monitor prices most mornings on PC Part Picker just to see if there's any changes I want to let you guys know about. But I just noticed that there's a place on here, and I'm not sponsored by PC Part Picker, it's a convenient thing. But anyway, I noticed there's a place here to post completed builds. And I was just scrolling through some of these and looking at the prices, and I just don't understand what some people are doing. So let me click on this one. Okay, first ever build. All right. So we got someone here saying, I'm slowly transitioning over to PC from Xbox, wanted something that I would be able to play games, stream, watch YouTube or Twitch, etc., but also not break the bank. Would love to hear comments or any advice. Well, I have a lot of advice, no idea if you'll end up watching this video. Also, this reminds me, I have a lot of students who will pop in at the end of the day. Sometimes they're actually interested in this exact thing. Switching over to PC from, they've been console gamers, they'll come to me with a parts list, and a lot of times, they've got some good ideas, and I might suggest a few tweaks. And other times, they've got something more like this, where I just don't understand. Okay. All right, so let's take a look at what we have here. So this is a $1,400 build, although that's including two 1080p monitors. So if we don't factor that in, if we just go in with the actual components other than the monitors, we're coming in with a $1,200 build, because that's two $100 monitors. Looks like they want to have two screens available. Okay, great. So why don't we put together a different build that is going to be, let's just start a new one. And I'll show you guys how to come out with basically a lot more performance for either the same money, or we could look at getting the same performance for a lot less money. So what a lot of people throwing the PC builds together for the first time don't seem to think a lot about is this being like a zero-sum game. If you have a certain amount of money you're able to spend, every dollar you spend on one component is a dollar that you can't spend on another component, okay? And so you need to prioritize, because there are certain components that either don't affect your performance at all, or so in such an indirect way that spending a lot of money on them don't really matter very much. For example, I'm not saying everyone should completely cheap out on a motherboard, but a motherboard does not directly influence your performance as long as it fits the CPU you want to put in it, and it doesn't, and it's not so bad that it completely thermal throttles the CPU on the VRMs or something like that. And even then, you're not usually losing that much performance. So unless you're getting into crazy overclocking or something like that, you just need a motherboard that has all the connections you want and fits the CPU you want. Also, anyway, so the biggest things actually impacting your performance are the CPU and the video card, okay? And so if you spend more on other components, you have to spend less on your CPU and your video card, and those are generally gonna be, if you dump more money into those two components, you're generally gonna get more performance overall out of your build. And that's how I target it. Now, this person is on a Ryzen 5000 build, and they said they're on a budget. So we're gonna start out with the Ryzen 5000 build, but let me talk about that for a second, okay? So the 5000 series from AMD is now older, right? There is a 7000 series, it's been out for a while now. But the 5000 series can still give you good performance, especially if you are on a budget. But this person has chosen the Ryzen 5800X in their system. And the problem with the 5800X is that it's fairly expensive. If I was gonna spend that much on a CPU, I would probably just go with the 7000 series or go with an Intel 13th gen or something like that. It does have 8-core 16-thread, but there's actually still very few games that are going to benefit from 8 cores versus 6 cores if they're fairly fast cores. So if you go with something like the Ryzen 5 5600, which is 6-core 12-thread, in the vast majority of gaming situations, your performance is actually going to be the same as on that 5800X, especially if you are GPU limited, in which case it will just be the same performance. And notice we can get that for $129. It's also going to include a stock cooler that will get the job done, although you could get, reduce noise or something like that. I don't hate the cooler they had here. Something like the Be Quiet Pure Rock 2 Black CPU cooler, a $45 CPU cooler is a reasonable thing to buy. For now, I'm going to leave that off here, and we'll throw that in as an option. But again, one of the advantages going with something like the 5600 is it does come with a stock cooler that will at least make the CPU run at its stock settings. Okay, also let's talk motherboards. So on PC Part Picker, once you've selected a CPU, you can just go to motherboards and it will automatically filter to the correct platform. For a Ryzen 5000 series CPU, you would be going with AM4 motherboards. And the other advantage of going with the 5000 series is the motherboards are very cheap. But this person's not taking advantage of that. Again, one of the only reasons why you'd go with the 5000 series at this point is because it's cheap. And the motherboards are cheap. But then they're buying a $180 motherboard. Okay, their motherboard does have built-in Wi-Fi, so maybe I'm going to assume it's important for their build that they do have Wi-Fi available. Also, there are different generations of this. Like you could go with a B450. B550s would be newer and would be more likely to have not need a BIOS update in order to install the CPU, that kind of a thing. So let's see if we can find something like a B550 with Wi-Fi. Okay, the ASRock B550 Phantom Gaming 4 AC, I believe, does indicate that the AC there, I think, is indicating that it has Wi-Fi available. Just needed something budget with Wi-Fi. Okay, so here's a budget Wi-Fi board. We're going to go with this one. Now, we're getting a compatibility warning saying that some B550 boards could have shipped with an older BIOS version that wouldn't support the Ryzen 5 5600. They might have shipped with just older generations. But here we have a motherboard, a CPU, and a stock cooler for $230, which is basically the price of just the CPU on the build that they were going with. And you will be hard-pressed to ever notice a difference in the vast majority of gaming situations between this CPU and motherboard combo and the one that they went with in their choice. Okay, now we also need to grab some RAM. Now, if you're going with the 5000 series, you're going to be on DDR4 RAM instead of the newer DDR5 RAM, and one advantage to that is also that it's very cheap right now. Looks like they're getting 16 gigabytes of RAM with RGB on it for $53. I have a feeling we could get 32 gigabytes of RAM for that same price or less. So I'm going to go down to the filters here, and I'm going to go, instead of going 2x8, which is what they did, I'm going to go 2x16. So we're looking for 16 gigabyte sticks, and I'm just going to sort price low to high, and we're going to take a look at things. So you want to look at the speeds, but you also want to look at the cache latency. And with cache latency, lower is better. And I think something like DDR 3200 CL16 is completely fine. If you're chasing some kind of esports build where you're more likely to be CPU limited and really chasing that kind of performance, then you might want to go for something more advanced. But honestly, DDR4 3200 CL16 seems fine to me. We can get 32 gigabytes of it for $50, whereas he was also going with 3200 CL16 memory. Half as much memory, 16 gigabytes. And I guess the only difference is he got RGB on it. Well, can we get one with RGB for not much more money? Honestly, RGB is not going to make your computer go faster. Okay, so if you really want the RGB, if that was an extremely important part of the build, it looks like if we go up into the $65-ish range, we can start getting 3600 CL18, if you want white, that kind of thing. Now, my recommendation is going to be RGB does not make your build go faster, so I don't know, really think hard about if that's something you need. So what we're going to do is go with the same speed of RAM they went with. Is that even RGB on it? I don't know. I think that's just paint. Okay. But we're going with the same speed of RAM, double the capacity, for less money than the build that they went with here. So I think that's a win overall. Okay, now they're getting into their storage, and I just cannot fathom buying a hard drive instead of a solid state drive. Okay, they want 2 terabytes of storage. We can do that. And they were only spending about $50. Well, one thing is we have freed up a lot more space in the budget. And also, I was talking about which components actually influence gaming performance. It is possible in games now for a hard disk drive to be so slow that not only will your load times be very bad, but a lot of modern games, especially built for the newer generation of consoles, are relying on streaming in a ton of assets very quickly because the new consoles have very fast, very fast SSDs. So it can actually affect like things popping in or like stuttering or just not working right. A lot of games now highly recommend or even require an SSD, and they might run on a hard disk drive but not run properly. Okay, so what am I gonna do here? You know what, I'm gonna search for a PCIe, we could go 3.0. So honestly, all I'm gonna do is I'm gonna just click on SSD, and we're gonna slide up to 2,000 gigabytes capacity. And we're just gonna notice that if I sort price low to high, that you can buy, this is not even an M.2, but just some sort of solid state drive for $64 and it's 2 terabytes versus $50 for a hard disk drive, and it's just absolutely worth the difference. Now, we could also look into whether we could get something noticeably faster. Like, I really like M.2s. I don't think the Team Group MP33 is particularly fast or amazing, but it's also $70, so not much more money than what they were wanting to spend anyway. We also have like the Intel 670p. Let's see, we've got the MP33 Pro for an extra $5. MP34, I believe, is actually fairly quick. Let's see. You know, what if we actually go to PCIe 4.0 drives? Those are also coming down in price. Some of these are faster than others. Let's see, the Team Group MP44L, Aorus Gen 4 right here at $100. We're starting to double their original storage price though. Okay, so I'm just gonna mention that you could probably get much faster than what I'm about to get. But again, it's not gonna make that big of a difference in gaming performance here. I'm just gonna go ahead and toss in a $70 M.2 drive, 2 terabytes, so it's the same storage capacity. It's a little bit more money, but we've cut prices elsewhere, and it's gonna be significantly faster just for booting up, running programs. Honestly, guys, do not install your operating system on a hard disk drive at this point in time, especially with how cheap SSDs are. Okay, now they went with a 6650 XT. I think those are great bang for the buck GPUs. However, we're gonna come back to the GPU. We're gonna throw in a case and a power supply. And I think we're gonna notice that I've saved so much money on other parts of this build that we are going to be able to just put in a GPU that crushes their original choice and make this overall build significantly faster. Okay, so let's look at cases. So again, talking about components that don't really impact your performance, other than it needs to actually fit your components. And if the cooling of it is so terrible that your parts thermal throttle, that's how your case could impact your actual performance. Other than that, you're mostly just paying for how things look, to be honest, okay? Another thing I would recommend is buying a case that comes pre-installed with at least a couple of fans, because the case manufacturer is going to be able to buy those fans in bulk a lot cheaper than you could buy fans separately. Scrolling through some of these, now, okay, you can sort prices low to high, and there's some really cheap cases out there, but I don't think they're going to be very fun to build in. I think at the price range we're going in this build, I'm okay with getting something like a Corsair 4000D Airflow, something with a mesh front panel. It looks like it has a pre-installed fan on the back. I think it looks like there's also one in the front. So we've got some air coming in the front, we've got some air coming out the back. We've got the airflow design, so this one has the mesh front. The cooling should be absolutely fine here. It comes in a little under $100. You could absolutely spend less money on a case. But I know that this is a very popular, well-reviewed case with decent airflow. Glancing at what's available here, you know, you could save a bit of money. Something like this Fantex Eclipse here, if you wanted RGB on it, did they have an RGB case? Okay, maybe they're looking for the RGB design, okay? So if we're looking for RGB, how about we go with the this one, $85. It looks like it's coming with 3 fans with RGB on the front. And it's less money than they already went with, okay? So there's that, $85 on the case. And then, so we're only at $433 now. We just need to throw in a power supply and a video card. That's it. So let's go ahead and throw in a power supply. So here's what I'm gonna do. Power supplies sometimes go on sale. So, you know, what's available and what's a good price is all over the place. I can tell you right now that I really hope that this person had had a really good deal on this when they put it in PC Part Picker and the price has changed. Because spending $170 on a 550 watt power supply is absolute insanity. So again, I'm just kindly hoping that the that the price has changed on them. Okay, now I'm not the world's foremost power supply expert, but I'm gonna just sort by 80 plus gold, platinum, and titanium. Now to be clear here, a lot of people assume that these 80 plus ratings are quality ratings. They're not, they're efficiency standard ratings, but generally it can also filter out some of the complete garbage because if they at least have one of those certifications, they're less likely, but not impossible, to be complete junk. So what I do from here is I generally sort price low to high, but I also can sometimes filter by how much wattage we want. Now they were going with 550 watts, which is completely fine. I think we can actually do better than that. Look at this right here. We got Superflower LED X3 ARGB 650 watt power supply for $85. Now, what I want to mention here is you might be like, Superflower, is that one of those complete no-name brands that is going to be like a ticking time bomb in your PC? And the answer is absolutely not. Actually, the PC I'm recording this video on has a Superflower LED X3 850 watt power supply. So just a little more power than the version here. Superflower manufactured some of the best EVGA power supplies, which have incredibly good ratings. It's just a lot of people don't understand that Superflower was actually the one manufacturing those and EVGA was slapping their name on it. And that's the case with a lot of the power supplies, is they have some kind of name brand on it, but somebody else like Superflower actually manufactured it. Now you could get into the deep end with these reviews, but this power supply for $85 right here looks completely fine for the build and is offering us more power than what they were getting off of theirs for significantly less money. Okay, now notice that we're at $500 right now, which means that we have a lot of money for a video card. So here's what I'm thinking. First of all, if we go with something like a 6800 XT, they were already going with an AMD video card, so they clearly weren't afraid of that. The 6800 XT at $500, if we check this out right now, this is now a $1,000 build. So if you were looking for like a bang for the buck $1,000 build, this is going to do a really nice job. The 6800 XT is going to crush 1080p, which is what his monitors were. Like, absolutely, and they're 75 hertz monitor. Okay, anyway, I don't think these monitors would be the choice to go with either. Anyway, maybe we freed up some more room in the budget to go with some better monitors, but I'm not gonna get into a monitor choice video here. But this 6800 XT will absolutely crush anything that they're throwing at it. Now, they did mention streaming though. So I will say that NVIDIA, or just newer generation cards in general with AV1 encoders could be a better idea. Now, if they're streaming to Twitch, the AV1 encoder is not going to be helpful. But NVIDIA's encoders, even though they're not AV1 encoder, would probably get you a better stream. So in other words here, we freed up enough room in the budget that I think this is great bang for the buck. If you want about this same GPU performance on an NVIDIA GPU, we could go with the 4070. Now the 4070 has some pros and cons. We could get one, it looks like we get the Asus Dual right now for $585. So the main con here is that in non-ray tracing games, this is going to be about the same speed as the 6800 XT, but it costs $85 more. Now, it has an AV1 encoder, so if they're streaming to YouTube, the 6800 XT didn't have that. And it also, if streaming to something like Twitch, NVIDIA's NVENC encoder does look a little bit better than AMD's encoder. So this person did specifically mention streaming as one of their use cases, and I think that this could help with that. Also, it helps, some people worry about the 6-core CPU while streaming. Well, if you're doing the streaming off the GPU encoder, there's really not a whole lot of CPU burden going on there anyway. But we'll also look into the fact that we're actually still under budget here. So we're coming in at $1,100. Again, if we throw out the two monitors, they had a $1,200 build, okay? So we're coming in with double the memory, a GPU that is just absolutely night and day difference in performance. Like, let's see, I haven't even done a direct GPU comparison between these two because they're just in different price classes. But if I go to something like Tech PowerUp's GPU database, so they were originally on a 6650 XT. And if we want to look at the relative performance here, we're going up to the RTX 4070, which is a 69% performance jump over the 6650 XT. We're also getting 12 gigabytes of VRAM instead of 8, which is going to be a lot more future-proof. Again, if we went the 6800 XT, it would be similar rasterized performance, but 16 gigabytes of VRAM. Again, though, this person seemed to be targeting 1080p. I think 12 gigabytes is completely fine for 1080p. The 4070 is I don't have any concerns about the 4070 at 1080p anytime soon. Now, maybe we could talk the person into going up to 1440p, but if they were doing a 1080p build, 4070, 12 gigabytes, great, good stuff for streaming. Also, when ray tracing, if they care about that at all, the difference between that and a 6650 XT or even a 6800 XT is going to be a big improvement in performance. And again, this person seems to be maybe more into the competitive side of things, but the, how should I put it, the frame generation, if they do play single player games, it's a feature that the 4070 has that the other ones wouldn't. Anyway, I think compared to their original build, this makes a lot of sense. Now, I will say, though, that we could have gone a completely different route, because if they are interested in competitive gaming, it is possible that we actually maybe should have gone a different route on the CPU and all of that. You could go up to the 7000 series, go with something like the 7800, or actually, you know what? Let's take a look at this. So if we want to stick with the 5000 series, what if we go with the 5800 X3D? And by going with that, my build is still right around their original price. However, now I'm probably going to need to get myself a CPU cooler. And you know what? I don't hate the Pure Rock Black 2. There's other similar $50, like the Peerless Assassin, things like that. There's reasonable $50 coolers that I think are going to do a adequate job. So we can go ahead and throw that in here. Okay, we're now at $1,300. So if we needed to get back down to the $1,200 budget, this is where we could sacrifice something somewhere. And most likely it would now have to be on the RTX 4070, because there's not a lot of other places we could cut, because I already cut about what we could. So if we had to get back down to the $1,200 budget, this is where I think our 4070 would have to drop back down to a 6800 XT. And again, if they're more interested in the competitive side of things anyway, maybe they're playing Warzone or something like that. AMD actually has a huge advantage in Warzone specifically. I have no idea what game they're specifically targeting. But now we're back into that $1,200 budget. And now we have the 5800X 3D, which is going to be a very good CPU. And this is going to be actually very competitive. So if I was going to spend more from here, you could dump more into the GPU. But if you want to go more into the longevity of the system, this is where it would make sense. You're at the top end of this motherboard platform. There's no upgrades from here. So you could have done a build more on something like a Ryzen 7600 on an AM5 motherboard with DDR5 memory, and it will all come out a bit more expensive than this, but it would give you a lot more upgradeability in the long run. So what I'm gonna do next, again, is basically just say, if you wanted to target something with more upgradeability for the future, here's what we'd have to do. So you could start with the Ryzen 7600, and the non-X version will perform about the same as the X version. It's not a big difference. I would probably just save the money there. Now, you could go up to the 8-core stuff. Again, whether that's worth it in your actual gaming performance differences that you would see, debatable. Motherboards here will, again, be more expensive. They do have the A620 boards out right now. I think that's more of a compromise because one of the goals here I'm going with is the upgradeability. Also, this person seemed to need Wi-Fi, A620 with Wi-Fi for $125. Not a huge fan of going with the A620. Okay, we got a B650 with Wi-Fi for $133. I don't know this specific board, and this is just kind of the end of my video throwing on some things. So I'm just gonna say I haven't researched this specific board, but it will be at least compatible, and it has Wi-Fi built in, which this person seemed to want. Now at this point, we would need to throw in some DDR5, and I would still go with 32 gigabytes. If I'm building a new system right now, I wouldn't go with 16 gigabytes of memory, so we're gonna go 2x16. We're gonna sort prices low to high. So we could get in the door with some fairly cheap RAM. If this person is thinking like esports though, maybe more CPU limited. DDR5 6000, but we're now at like a cast latency of 38. The cast latency does matter here. I'm gonna see what we could get. Let's see if we're going with DDR5 6000, and let's maybe go with our cast latency. Let's see what we could get. Let's set at like 34 minimum, and then see how much more we have to pay for worse than that. Did I not set that correctly? Oh wait, I wanted to set the maximum, not the lowest. Okay, so I don't care how low it goes. Let's. I don't want to see anything above like a 34. Okay, how expensive does that get? So $100. Okay, 6400 CL32, 6000 CL32. 6400 may or may not be compatible with certain motherboards and CPUs. That's interesting. I'm gonna go ahead and throw this one in here. These are really more placeholders, did not do a lot of research. This does come with a box cooler. So we're now actually in at about $1,200 again. So I would say this is another route to go. So I originally went with the 5000 series motherboards because that's what they started with. But here we could come in with the 7600, which in a lot of gaming situations is going to be faster even than their 5800. The 5800 has more cores, but most games don't need more cores. They need more single-threaded IPC, that kind of thing. Sorry, this is going to have that. So actually, I think this will outperform the original build by quite a bit. Again, it does have a stock cooler. We're right at the $1,200 budget, so if you want to throw in the extra $50 for something like this Be Quiet cooler, something like that, you can, but just realize again that that is going over. I did set the $1,200 as my target. Okay, guys, what do you think about all this? I'm not saying that this is the world's best build. I didn't thoroughly research every single detail of every single part, especially things like the SSD. We could maybe find something that's a little better price to performance. You know, case power supply can be debatable, but I think this is a pretty good build. I think people would be overall very happy with this. I think I'm happiest with this build right here at the end. I think it's going to be worth it to go with the 7600 because now this motherboard should support several more CPU generations, at least one more, if not two more, or who knows, right? So I think you get a lot more upgradeability in this system. So I'm a lot happier with this overall. What do you guys think in the comment section? I think this is a pretty dang good $1,200 build. And I think I better leave it at that. I've got to get to work, and we'll see if any students ask me about a $1,200 build today. I'll have some ideas for them. All right, I hope this video was useful, not just in, hey, here's a cool build, but like the thought process behind, like I said, there's a lot of parts here that are just not impacting performance that we're spending a lot of money on. The only last thing I'd say here is, just don't buy a 75 hertz monitor if you're interested in gaming right now. Like, you should be able to get a monitor, 144 hertz at least, 1080p monitor, something like that, without breaking the bank. But we're at 30 minutes and I've got to go, so we won't get into the monitor choices. I just think you could do better there as well. I hope all of you have an excellent day.